For the first time in franchise history, the Philadelphia Eagles enter the season as defending Super Bowl champions. Feels great. Brendan Albert is here. I am Adrian Fedke. On to the worst division in football, maybe. I don't know. The Eagles are good, but I don't know about the rest of the teams.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, obviously, when you have the defending Super Bowl champs in your division, everything else becomes a little more competitive. But I agree. I think the rest of the teams, not anyone that really I feel threatens the Eagles to win the division. I think the Eagles can win this pretty easily.
Yeah.
It's nice because now you're getting that New England Patriots effect of where you could get
exactly
in the division.
And this, you know what? This is huge. This is huge because you're going to be fighting with teams like the Vikings and the Saints and the Falcons and the Rams, whoever is in the NFC for that number 1 and number 2 seed. But you're going to get an extra win or two because you're in the NFC East.
Exactly right. I mean, we talked about this on one of our South shows. The NFC South is going to beat up on itself. It's really hard for a team in the NFC South to have 11 wins just because they beat up on each other. The North is very similar too. I mean, the Packers and Vikings, you figure they're probably going to split. And the Lions are still okay, and I think the Bears are improving. The West, I think the Rams have a pretty big lead, but who knows with the Niners. I don't see any team in the NFC East that really should be able to steal 2 wins from the Eagles at the very, very worst case, split them.
Yeah, I see it in the East. They're going to go like 4-2, maybe even 5-1. You put them in the South or the North, they go 3-3. Maybe you go 4-2.
100% agree with that, Adrian. 100% agree.
There it is. All right. The other bold prediction for me, I don't even think the other teams are going to finish over 500. I think the Eagles are the only team that finishes over 500.
You know, my first reaction is wow. And then I sat back and I said, I think that's a bold prediction. I don't think it's such a bold prediction. I think we're going to see 2 teams who are going to be 500 and 1 team who's not going to be 500.
Yeah.
So I think, Adrian, your assessment is probably pretty close to being accurate.
Yeah, we'll get to the Cowboys, and I'm sure I'm going to be called a hater or whatever, but I'm sorry. I'm about to spit some realism. All right, let's start with the champs, though. How realistic is it a possibility? Can they repeat?
Well, how often do we talk about a team winning the Super Bowl and potentially being better the next year?
Doesn't happen often.
Doesn't happen.
Normally you lose those players to free agency.
Exactly right. You know, and that's the normal real world of the NFL. It hasn't happened with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think, honestly, my biggest thing that I'm glad they did, we were doing a show a while ago when the signing happened. The Nigel Bradham re-signing, I think, is the biggest signing for the Philadelphia Eagles, in my personal opinion. I think that's just so important that they did that. Obviously, you're getting Peters back healthy. Carson, you figure maybe he takes max, worst case scenario, 3 games, misses 3 games. You're still going to be okay in the long run. So I agree, Adrian. I think it's very likely this team can repeat.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement. Start Nick Foles. For the longest time, it seemed like Carson Wentz was ahead of schedule, and you saw the offseason videos, and I was getting so excited. I'm like, man, maybe there really is a chance that he starts in the opener. But then, obviously the reality kind of set in. Okay, maybe he's not ready yet. Nick Foles suits up the first couple. I'm cool with it. Protect your franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is if they lose to the Falcons, let's play worst case scenario here. If you lose to the Falcons, here's the next 2 you got, the Buccaneers and the Colts.
Yes.
Okay, so right there, you're 2-1. Worst case scenario, you'll be 2-1. So I'm completely cool with Foles sitting here. And Adrian, we talked about this. If this was the Rams week run, for example, I would be a little more nervous because I think that could have been a tiebreak scenario for a higher seeding. Because this is the Falcons and the NFC South. I don't think the Falcons are going to win 4 games in their division. It's just too hard for them to. So because of that alone, I think the Eagles, even if they lose this, I don't see this being a tiebreak scenario between home field and playing on the road.
That's a good point because I got the Falcons at the end of the day finishing 10-6, and I think the Eagles are better than a 10-6 team.
I agree with that.
There it is. All right, let's talk about Carson then, and let's talk about this ACL, LCL injury. I think that the thing to keep in mind here is I'm expecting him to come back and be a little rusty. Maybe things are a little slow, and I just hope people in Philadelphia aren't like freaking out because Carson Wentz is like, oh, well, what's going on? He doesn't look like Carson the last year.
I think that's fair. I mean, I look, you had a guy who was the MVP of the league. Like, to be fair, the only thing he can do is go down. And that's just the honest truth. Like, I don't think Carson's going to be a guy who can replicate MVP that level he was on every single year. And I'm not saying that as a knock. I'm just saying the only guys who can do that every single year is Rodgers and Brady and Breeze.
Yeah.
I think every other quarterback kind of rides a roller coaster, and that's normal. And you know what? If I'm wrong, hey, that's fantastic for Philadelphia Eagles. Worst case scenario, even if Carson has a little bit of a struggle, I still think he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL this year. So I'm with you, Adrian. I have zero rush for him. If he comes out rusty, look, the Bucs and the Colts, those are 2 preseason defenses.
Exactly.
It's an easy way for him to warm up, get into it. Tennessee, a little bit better, and then it gets rolling with the Vikings, and then you start getting into division from there.
Yeah, they really have a perfect slate to start and bring Carson Wentz back.
100% right. It's kind of like the putting on training wheels. For Carson, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. You're playing the NFL. You always can lose to any team. I get that, any given Sunday. But I feel very confident that he can come out against the Bucs and get some of the rust on him, and they'll still win the game.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Nick Foles now. Are you a Nick Foles guy? Where do you kind of put him in the scheme of the NFL? Do you think he's like a top 20 quarterback, top 25-ish? What do you think?
I think probably top 25 is fair. I think 20 to 25 is probably a fair area. There's a whole bunch of guys that are like in that breath that just kind of depends on how you view, like your Daltons, your Tannehills, your Taylors. Those type of guys are also in that mix. And look, obviously the run that he went on was amazing, and I'm not trying to knock it, but I also saw Joe Flacco make a run similar to that. Obviously, I'm not saying they're the same. I know Foles is way better. I'm not a moron. But I'm simply saying that when you go on a high run like that, it's not consistent, right? Because if it was consistent, he would have been an NFL starter before that. That said, he's easily still the best backup in the NFL, and he's better than most of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So, yeah, Adrian, I think the 20 to 25 range is fair for Nick Foles.
Yeah, and, with Nick, I made a video on this recently. So in the playoffs, the offensive line was absolutely tremendous. They only allowed 2 sacks the entire postseason.
Mm-hmm.
There's I'm going to see if I can find this tweet because Zach Berman has a tweet on Nick Foles, and I've mentioned this tweet before. He's got the highest variance of any quarterback he's ever seen, and I'm trying to find it. Let's see if I can find this as I'm speaking. I can't find it. Okay. All right. Well, basically it comes down to this for me. In the preseason, we saw the bad Nick Foles. The reason why we saw the bad Nick Foles is we saw an atrocious offensive line. They allowed 8 sacks in 2 games, 8 sacks in 2 halves of football, too, in both first halves that Nick Foles played in Game 2 and Game 3. So when you pressure him and he's backpedaling and he's throwing off his back foot, he's sailing the ball, that's when he's struggling. That's when you see the bad Nick Foles. When you get the offensive line protecting him and he's got all day to throw and you implement the RPOs and he's playing without thinking and not having to navigate through the trash because he's not really a guy that's going to navigate the pocket, that's when he's at his best, and that's when you see what you saw in the postseason. Do you agree with that?
1,000%. And I think if we also look at the postseason games, I mean, look, Atlanta, not really a defense that I'm completely fair to get after me. The Vikings, absolutely. That's a defense I 100% do fear. New England, not a defense I really feared. So right there, 3 of those games, only one of them I'm really fearful of the defensive line affecting my quarterback. But you said it perfectly, Adrian. The offensive line played at all pro levels across the board there, which makes everything significantly easier for a quarterback.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, he was dropping dimes in the Super Bowl. You know what? They weren't dimes. They were quarters. That's how good they were. That's how pristine these balls were. The one to Clement in the back of the end zone.
That's what I was thinking too.
The wheel route to I mean, everything was just pinpoint. I had never, ever seen him play that well, and it came at the right time and the biggest game ever. It was unbelievable.
It really was. And here's the thing. I don't make it sound like we're dumping on Nick Foles because both Adrian and I think he's a top 25 quarterback in the NFL and absolutely someone who's good enough to go start somewhere else. But we're also kind of saying this tongue-in-cheek, blindly assuming that if Carson struggles, do not be one of those guys saying, oh, well, it's time to put Nick Foles in. No, it's not. That time is never going to come, okay? Carson Wentz, this is the team. He's quarterback of the future. Don't be that guy who the first interception that you see Carson throw, say, oh, well, Nick Foles is ready to go. No, don't be that dude.
Let's move on to the running backs. So you got Jay Ajayi. He averaged 5.8 yards per carry in Philly.
Yeah.
It was kind of limited. They never really unleashed him. I don't know if he ever recorded 20 carries. I didn't do the research before the show, so I'm sorry about that. But they kind of limit him. He was in a running back by committee. I have read during the offseason that they do plan on unleashing him a little bit more. It is a contract year, and I'm sure they're not going to re-sign him, so you might as well run him to the ground.
I think the exact same thing. If you're not planning on re-signing him, run him in the dirt, man. I mean, that was my concern. I'm going to tell you right now, I think Le'Veon Bell's going to have the same situation in Pittsburgh. I think the Steelers are going to just run him into the dirt, and then when he's like, hey, can I get a new contract? They're going to turn and say, nah, your best days are behind you and you're hurt. Well, yeah, it's because you're going to run him in the dirt. If I'm the Eagles, I'm doing the same thing here with Jay Ajayi. I like Jay Ajayi. I think he's a good running back, probably certainly a more than capable starting running back in the NFL. But I'm with you, Adrian. I don't think he's necessarily an elite all-pro. I also wouldn't see a huge surprise if Corey Clement starts to beat him out for some big-time carries.
Yeah, I was about to mention his name. I am a Corey Clement guy. I like him a lot. And, he's the reason why you can part with Jay Ajayi at the end of the year, because Corey Clement will be your guy next year.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I agree. I mean, he's going to see snaps too. He's going to see time in the field. So it's not going to be a true running back by committee like it was last year, because last year the carries were really divvied up pretty evenly. This year I'm thinking maybe you go 60-40 Ajayi and Clement, something like that.
I might go 50-30, and that remaining 20 is then Sproles just, being that weapon guy kind of here.
I think he's going to be doing a lot of pass catching this year.
It's his last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he deserves to get as much playing time or as little playing time as he wants. I guess the good question maybe I would have for all the viewers here, do you think Darren Sproles is a Hall of Famer? Because that's going to be a really interesting debate in a couple of years. So I'd love to hear everyone's feedback in the comments there.
That might be one where it's like over time he gets in, maybe not initially, but over time people will respect what he did.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's very fair.
Yeah. I think people may roll their eyes initially when they hear Darren Sproles, but when you really, really look and break it down, I mean, you see guys make the Hall of Fame when they transform the league. Like, you don't necessarily always have to be the best of the best. Sometimes when you just change the league, you make it too. And Darren Sproles, the way Minnie Mouse, he's changed the league some ways.
I mean, when I think of a third down back, he's the number one third down back I think of all time. And that's what I would view I would argue that's how he changed the league. If I'm putting on the opposite hat, I could say, well, you were never the best running back at your position at any time. How can you be a Pro Bowler? So I can see both sides of that, but I'm really curious to see what people think about that idea.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the wideouts, the receivers. So wide receivers last year, there were only two guys all year that went over 100 yards for the Birds. That says two things. You got a lot of versatility, and you got a lot of weapons, because that ball is being evenly distributed. If you look at the stats, they were top-ranked offense basically in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So –
yeah, I mean, you're going to see more 12 personnel this year with the Eagles, more double tights because of the high investment there in Dallas. And certainly Dallas and Ertz can absolutely play detached enough and run good enough routes to still win there. The thing I am a little worried about here is if Alshon is down, let's play worst case scenario. Alshon's actually hurt more, or he comes back too soon and then gets hurt. Is there any other receivers that really scare me? Because I like Nelson. He had an unbelievable year last year, but that's only one. And the rest of the receivers, not exactly awesome. Now, the tight ends more than make up for it here, and there certainly is still enough weapons in Philadelphia for this to be an elite-level offense. But I think the most important guy to stay healthy on the offense is Alshon Jeffrey this year.
Yeah, and it's not only just what he can do on the field, but what he provides for the other guys. I mean, he's taking the number one cornerback. So now you're going to have Mike Wallace maybe on Desmond Trufant. Like, he's not getting anything on Thursday night. Whoever's going on Robert Alford, whether it's Matt Collins or whoever, he's not getting any yardage on Thursday night. So you're right there. I mean, besides Jeffrey, there's not much on the outside. Now, because of the versatility, they can just work the middle of the field. So you got the 12 personnel. You got Goddard and Ertz, because Goddard looks like he's the real deal. And then you got Aguilar in the slot. So you can kind of work around it. We'll see if they can, though. That's the thing.
Especially if you have an elite offensive mind like the Eagles have there, you can find ways to be successful without these guys. But I'm just saying, long term, if Alshon is out at any stretch of time, That is a concern. That is a glaring concern I can foresee for the Philadelphia Eagles. As long as he's healthy, though, this offense shouldn't be at the top in points per game.
Yeah, and I'm also curious to see if Goddard's blocking comes along. Because here's the interesting thing about the 12 personnel. It was very predictable last year as to what they were going to do, depending on which tight end was in with Ertz. You have Selleck in there, they're running the ball. You have Trey Burton in there, they're throwing the ball. But with Dallas Goedert, if the blocking comes along, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Absolutely. The thing that is so awesome about Dallas Goedert is exactly what you talked about, Adrian. He kind of blends the best of those two guys you talked about there, in Selleck and Trey. And here's the thing that really would scare me as a defensive coordinator. Most defensive coordinators, what they wait, if they don't make a play call, they see the offense, bring their personnel in, they radio up, they say, okay, guys, we got 12 personnel. And they're going to say, okay, 2 tight ends. Okay, let's go to a 46 here. Probably going to go heavy. Eagles can then go 4 wide because they can put both of those guys in the slots. And now me as a defensive coordinator, I have to counteract. So there's a lot of different chess piece moves the Eagles can be doing. And this is what I talked about with finding ways to scheme yourselves into a better offensive position.
Yeah, we're going to see them in line. We're going to see them in the slot. We're going to see them outside. So we're going to see a couple different things with those tight ends. All right, let's move on to the offensive line. Obviously, to me, it's the best offensive line in the league. But we'll see if Jason Peters can be back healthy because Big V had about as bad of a preseason as I can remember. And, the thing about him was I was saying, like, all offseason, I don't think he's for real because when you look back, it was actually Lane Johnson who was facing all the feared pass rushers. Von Miller, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Justin Houston, Jason Pierre-Paul, all those guys were on the other side. They weren't on Big V's side. He did do a great job against Everson Griffin in the NFC Championship game. Sure, I'll give him that. But then Super Bowl happened. He got James Harrison got the best of him. And then we've seen it this preseason. So Big V, there are a lot of people saying they think he could be the starting left tackle of the future. I don't see it. I see a backup. I see a swing tackle here.
I agree with that. I think this was a very similar situation of getting hot at the right time there for Big V, and that's awesome. I mean, you got to remember, too, when you look at the rest of this Eagles offensive line, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, I could argue all 3 of these guys are the best at their respective positions in the NFL.
Yeah. And
then, of course, you have Jason Peters. Yeah, he's a little bit older, but I would still take him on my left tackle today if I needed one.
Mm-hmm.
So the great thing is you have 2 developing left tackles behind them, and you can see what happens. But I agree with you, Adrian. Let's say, for example, Peters signs retired this year, which is very, very possible. If you're not happy with those 2 tackles, I think this is where a place the Eagles could look to spend an early draft pick next season.
Yeah.
Left position.
Well, the good thing for them is they might have found something in the 7th round in Jordan Mailata. I don't think anybody got as much hype as he did in the preseason.
No, I mean, depending on if you're a Pro Football Focus, some people love the stuff, some people hate it. It depends on how you like it. They named him the best rookie left tackle in the preseason. So take that for a grain of salt. Take that for what you want. But obviously, if you're being named the best at anything, I'm cool with that. And you know what? We got to remember this, guys. Most players who are drafted after the 4th round usually don't make the roster that same year.
Yeah.
So not only is Jordan making the practice squad, he's making the active roster. And Adrian, I know something you believe strongly in too. If they put him on the practice squad, someone was probably going to steal him.
Oh yeah. You had to put him on the roster. You had to. I mean, that's how great he was looking. Did you get a chance to see him at all?
I did watch a little bit of him. I mean, he's looked really good. The preseason offensive and defensive line stuff, I take very, very little stock in it. And I'm not saying that to knock Jordan. I'm saying that because mostly he's facing 2, 3, 4 defenses, which is fine, normal. But those 2, 3, 4 defenses are also getting watered down defensive playbooks. So it's not necessarily as closely replicated to what a NFL Sunday game would look like in terms of the complexity of the defense. So he's getting a little simple. That said, he looked awesome for all things considered. He's looked awesome.
And to clarify kind of what you're saying for the people, he's going to see stuff like stunts and stuff he's never seen before, stuff that he might not even know what it is yet.
Exactly.
So
exactly right.
There it is. Yeah. So yeah, a lot more moving pieces and got to be quicker with the feet and yeah. I'll tell you what though, have you seen his kick slide? That the depth that he gets on it.
That's a big man moving. It is awesome. It is really, really freaking cool.
Dude, every time I was laughing the whole time watching him play. I'm like, he looks so awkward at times, but then he's fucking watching the guy down the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean, look, the upside is here, and honestly, in the 7th round, those late round picks, all you're doing is drafting guys with upside. Maybe you're drafting a guy who was kicked out of school, or maybe you're drafting a guy that had, marijuana issues, or you're drafting a guy who only played 1 year of football, or in this case, no years of football. In the 7th round, you're just taking flyers, throwing darts at the dartboard, and hoping something sticks, and it might stick.
The funny thing about this draft, if you remember, about the linemen, about the tackles, I was like, yeah, I wasn't crazy about these tackles. So the guy that I had number 1 was the guy that I thought was the highest upside. I was wrong about the guy with the highest upside, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair, Adrian, when we're doing film study, it's kind of hard to do film study of a guy who doesn't have film.
Yes.
So I don't think either of us can really bang the table and be like, how did we miss on this guy? I mean, I knew who the guy was, to be honest with you, because he was training at the same place that I used to work at. So I knew a bunch of the guys that were working with him, but I wasn't necessarily saying like, hey, do me a favor, pull out your cell phone and film him and then let me talk about him. I'm not going to do that. So certainly there's a reason this guy is an undrafted or a 7th round pick in the NFL draft last year.
All right, let's move on. We're actually spending lots of time with the Eagles, so sorry for that. But obviously it is an Eagles show. Let's talk about the D-line. I mean, it gets even better with the addition of Michael Bennett. Haloti Ngata for depth. I mean, the second unit of the defensive line could start for, 20 teams in the NFL.
Deepest D-line in the NFL. It's loaded. Not to mention you still have Josh Sweat there, who is a guy who is all world level upside too in the draft. And everyone knows about his injury history, and that's a concern for long term. So what do? You make him the 3rd defensive end, and you just say, hey, we'll probably play you 15 snaps a game, and we'll play you on 3rd down. And we're just going to say, hey, see the guy at the quarterback? Go get him. That's it. Make it very simple for him. I think this is an elite level defensive line.
Yep. They had 4 guys with 5 sacks, so they're getting just regular pressure. They were first against the run, obviously, so they were stuffing the run, and they were 4th in points allowed. So you're getting pressure on the quarterback. It makes it easier for the secondary, and then you're stopping the run. You're stuffing the run. So really, really impressive. And this is a line too that's very athletic. If you're a zone team, you're not running on the Eagles. The teams that do well in the Eagles are actually the power teams. You run up the middle a little bit, and the Eagles will kind of not break or anything, but they bend a little bit. But when you run that outside stuff, you ain't getting nothing.
No doubt. And if you want to see an example of athleticism, Google search Haloti Ngata playing rugby, because he was another one of those rugby guys. He's another dude who has that weird level of athleticism for someone who should not be moving that fast.
Yeah, I think he's an alien. There's no way he's like a real human.
Yeah.
You're not like 400 pounds moving fast. It's not natural. It's not possible. All right, let's move on to linebackers. I'm going to ask you an Achilles question. I know you're not a doctor, but I know you're a football guy. How long does it take to get back from an Achilles, like truly? Because I think this is Jordan Hicks' 2nd one.
It worries me a lot. The Achilles, anything in the ankle, it's worried me most about defensive backs, and then I would say receivers, then followed by linebackers, especially linebackers, because everything is burst moving forward. This is a concern. And Jordan Hicks, exactly like you talked about, Adrian, has far been from the model of health. So this is a little bit of a concern for me. Adrian, this was something you and me talked about as potential a 1st-round draft pick need in the Eagles' last year draft. Didn't address it. That's fine. Re-signed Nigel Bradham. I'm not in love with the linebacking crew. However, you get a loaded defensive line in front of you, it can make bad linebackers look good.
Yeah, it's the weakest unit on the team, but they are a team that plays nickel base most of the time. So we're only going to have two linebackers out there most of the time, and that's going to be Hicks and Bradham. Although Bradham is suspended the 1st game and Hicks is injury prone. So if like Hicks goes down, you're kind of like, shooting yourselves in the foot there. Nate Jerry is going to be the weak side guy, so he's going to take Michael Kendrick's snaps. Jerry was someone that kind of like unexpectedly took the job. He was a guy I had my eye on, but I didn't think he was going to get the starter job. So there's that.
Yeah, the linebacking crew is certainly something I'm interested to kind of see develop. The Nigel Bradham 1-game suspension is whatever to me. I could care less, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think he was the most important signing for the Eagles this offseason, because if they didn't re-sign him, this linebacking crew looks really bad. He makes his crew move. We remember watching a film study where he was playing the Panthers, and he is just absolutely the alpha dog of getting everyone lined up. It's so awesome to watch him. So it's a huge signing for the Eagles and the linebacking crew.
The most improved unit from the past couple seasons is the secondary and the cornerbacks. They're actually starting to stock up on these guys. Ronald Darby had a great preseason, and maybe he's the one that gets an extension in December. The Eagles always give somebody an extension in December. I thought it was going to be Brandon Graham. Maybe it's Ronald Darby because the way he's looking right now. So go ahead.
I'm going to be honest with you. This might be the most improved specific unit in the entire NFL over the last 2 seasons.
That's bold.
This defensive back crew was horrible. I mean, it was layup lines going against the Eagles DBs a couple years ago, and now they're starting to look like a true no-fly zone, looking like a great defensive back crew here. Corners, a lot of depth. Obviously, we still have Sidney Jones to kind of see what's what there. Maddox there can come in and play that nickel spot for you. Obviously, you have Malcolm Jenkins. I'm still not a huge fan of McLeod or Graham at the other safety spot.
I agree.
I don't love either of those guys. I think in the long term, Adrian, I'd be very curious. Do we see Jalen Mills move to safety and Sidney Jones become the full-time corner opposite? I think that's possible.
Yeah, that's a video I actually made during the offseason. I think he's the guy that should move to safety because right now Sidney Jones is in the slot. He never played the slot before. He started in the spring, and he won the slot cornerback position, so he's going to start there. I think he's got the quickness and the mirroring skills and the quick feet to be able to handle it, but something he's never done before.
Yeah, and I think obviously if we see Maddox or we see Douglas start to improve at the slot, then all of a sudden they can just start pushing everyone around. Either way, a lot of versatility, very good defensive back crew. Yep.
And an emergence of Maddox actually allowed them to cut Bosby because Bosby was like their third nickel. He was a guy that emerged. They're speaking high of him, and then he kind of came back down to earth during the summer. And then, you talked about Douglas. He's going to be another guy on the outside, press guy. He's got some ball skills. So 8 interceptions his senior year in college. Showed a little bit of that last year. So there is depth galore, and I can't wait to see Sidney Jones because that was my guy last year. So we'll see about that.
No doubt.
Yeah. All right, what you got prediction-wise?
12-4, 13-3 here for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, you're gonna lose a couple games, right? It just happens. It's so rare that you see a team have less than 2 losses, honestly, in the NFL. And again, here's the other thing too. When we make all these predictions, we're assuming everyone stays healthy. It's not going to happen. It's really not. So I think 13-3, 12-4 is a fair kind of assumption. Vegas has the Eagles at 10.5. I would take the over.
Yeah, that's an interesting number to me. Why it's I don't know if they're getting disrespected again or what that's all about.
Here's the thing I always have with Vegas numbers. Vegas numbers is usually based on today. So based on today, your starting quarterback's not playing. So the Vegas line is now's a great time to put money on that because they're saying, well, we haven't seen Carson Wentz play, so how can we blindly assume he's going to? And Vegas doesn't want to put money high and then say, well, Carson's out extended period of time, has a setback, now all of a sudden money's going the other way.
Yeah.
So I'm a little surprised it wasn't set like at 11. But either way, I have them 12-4, 13-3 range, winning the division and being the number 1 seed.
Yeah, can they do it at 11? Like, does it have to be a half or can it be 11?
They can do it holes, but it's not recommended because then Vegas starts getting the push money. They don't want to get into the push money. They want to win it or they want to lose it.
10.5 might actually be right then, because like 11.5, are you really going to go bold and go over that? That's 11.5 is a tougher number, I think.
Yeah. And it also depends, too. It's also important to know it depends on where you look. Like, I like Westgate. That's my personal preference. If you went to MGM Grand or someone else, you can get different lines. So it will vary.
Yep. Well, I've got 12-4. I've got 11-5, 12-4. So that's funny that you actually have the better record. So, we'll go 12-4 here. I still think they're the best team in the NFC. I really do. We'll see who competes with them. We'll see about the Vikings. The Vikings, they were a team I was not scared of whatsoever last year. But this year, Kirk Cousins, for whatever reason, is an Eagles killer and still great defense. So I think it's going to be we're going to be battling it out again in the NFC Championship.
I think so too.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Dallas. I'm going to tell you right now, I think this might be Jason Garrett's final year. I think this could be a disaster of a season. I could see the wheels completely falling off in Dallas.
It's hard not to say this is going to be his final year. I mean, he's also one of the highest tenure guys in the NFL in terms of head coaches, and certainly doesn't exactly have the playoff record by any means to merit it. So yeah, Adrian, I can see that as well.
Yeah, let's start right away. Let's start with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, are you a Dak fan?
I am a Dak fan. I know a lot of people aren't, but I'm a Dak fan, but I also always take this with a grain of salt. People are going to say, okay, well, the offensive line and the running game makes him. Sure it does. Absolutely. But that's like saying Julio Jones makes Matt Ryan. Of course it does. Like you can't – I have a hard time blaming a guy for what is around him. Like wouldn't every quarterback want a great offensive line, good running back, and good receivers around him? Of course. So I have a hard time blaming him. Now that said, I don't think Dak's a top 10 quarterback. But I still think he's on the outside of it, just on the outside. I like Dak, though. I think the upside is high for him. And I think if he actually had some legitimate weapons around him that weren't 30-plus years old like Jason Witten was, then I think the Cowboys could really take it to the next level. But I don't see that happening this year and maybe even for a whole nother season.
So what do you have? Like, you think he's like top 15, top 20?
That's probably fair. I would probably say, without actually sitting down and writing it all out, I'd probably say 10 to 13 would be my ballpark guess without me sitting down and writing it out.
You like Dak a lot more than I do. But
I like Dak for a couple reasons. One, mobility is a big thing for me in quarterbacks. I think that's something that's really underrated, and that's a big reason why I'm not as high on guys like Matt Ryan as some other people. So I give mobility people a higher grade there. The other thing I like about Dak is he's not necessarily a huge risk taker, which is a pro and a con. So if you're someone like me, you probably also like Alex Smith and Tyrod Taylor, like I personally do, for those exact same reasons. But if you're someone who wants to see a team push the ball down the field, be a little more risk adverse, you're probably more of a fan of like Phillip Rivers or maybe Pat Mahomes this upcoming season. So I like Dak personally, Adrian, but I also understand people who don't. But that's why I have him in that 10 to 13 range. Nothing higher than that, though. I'm not crazy.
Yeah. Here's my thing with him. I mean, they have a great O-line, so this kind of hides some of these things. When he gets pressured and you pressure his face, that's when you see bad Dak and really bad Dak. We just don't see that often because the line is so great. And I'm talking pressure in his face, like right up the middle. And they're missing Travis Frederick right now. So I'm curious to see right away, you know, you're already missing one of your pieces to see how you fare. And that's the other thing about the line, man. That was a line that for forever never got hurt until last year. Last year happened. And then we saw Dak. It coincided with Dak's struggles. So if the line is hurt, I think Dak can struggle. And you have Frederick out. We'll see if they face some good defensive tackles early on that can pressure the pocket. I don't know. We'll see. You and I, this is one we differ on. We
do, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I think it's just healthy that, you know, we're not puppets and saying all the same shit all the time.
Exactly.
I think we'll probably see at some point, if Frederick's out for a long term, I could see their high draft pick there and Connor Williams sliding into center. He was a guy who's played tackle. A lot of NFL people saw him as a guard. He's currently slated to play guard, but he also did a lot of workouts at center. So if Frederick's out long term, maybe you see him move to center. And that's not a bad situation either. It's great to have that versatility in a high draft pick there.
Well, I'll tell you what, they signed some receivers and they fit Dak's skill set, man. Everything's going to be under 10 yards.
There's none of these receivers that really get me excited. I mean,
oh my God. These guys stink.
Yeah, 3 years ago, Allen Hurds, I think he had a 60 reception year, but that was 3 years ago. And the other 2 years, he's failed to stay healthy. Michael Gallup was a guy both you and Adrian and I were not high on coming out of the draft.
He's having a good preseason. I don't care.
Well, cool. I mean, like, I will say, hey, that's great, but I'm not going to crown anyone because of preseason.
Exactly.
Terrence Williams for years has been overrated.
Yes.
Years has been overrated. And I do like Cole Beasley out of the slot, but, I mean, it's hard for me to say your offense is elite if you're a good slot receiver.
I like Cole Beasley too, but he's the best receiver on the Cowboys, and that's a problem.
Exactly right. I agree with that. And then you have the Tavon Austin X. Okay. I mean, look, for what they traded for him, it was so minimal. It really wasn't a bad deal for them. But to be honest with you, when you look in that receiving room and there's no one who could really scare you off the top, I get why they brought Tavon Austin in, but you're not expecting him to be your number one. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, and they also have to fill Jason Witten's shoes. So you lose Dez, you lose Jason Witten. I was not a fan of Dez Bryant's release. From Cowboys people, that are trying to justify it. They're like, well, they need to pay Dak Prescott at some point. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, please give him $100 million.
I mean, look, quarterbacks are going to get overpaid every single year.
Absolutely.
As a Baltimore Ravens fan, quarterbacks get paid every single year.
Yeah.
It just happens. So, like, I don't even care about how much quarterbacks make anymore, to be honest, because I know they're going to get paid more than they deserve. I didn't have an issue with the Dez Bryant release because of his personality. That was, like, the big thing that everyone heard was everyone said that his personality and it was his ego and all that. And if that's it, that's fine because his production was not matching up to what, his attitude apparently was. That said, if Dez Bryant came back to the Cowboys today, he's the number one receiver still. So that's not a good sign when you release a receiver and you literally have no plan for replacing him. Or I should say, your plans for replacing him have not worked.
I felt like Dak had something to do with Dez's struggles. I don't think Dak could get him the ball the way Dez wants the ball. Those contested jump ball type of situations, I don't think Dak can get him the ball.
I would counterpoint you here, Adrian, and say if that was true, then Dez Bryant would have been signed by another team by now. Because if NFL teams
he's apparently turning down a bunch of deals. I don't know what Dez is doing.
That's fair. That's a fair point too. Honestly, if there was a trade that the Cowboys should have made, not Earl Thomas, let's go out and get Jarvis Landry because he would have fit exactly what the Cowboys wanted.
Actually, yes.
That's great move for the Cowboys. But, oh well, too bad. So sad. Didn't happen.
Offensive line, we forgot to talk about Zeke. Zeke Elliott. I've got him top 3 running back, obviously. You like Zeke, obviously?
Got him. I took him number 5 in both of my fantasy drafts. So yeah, I like Zeke. He's gonna get fed the ball.
Went number 5. Wow, how about that?
Yep. I had Rod Smith. I like Rod Smith as a backup running back. But look, this team runs around Zeke. So offense runs around through and over and with Zeke.
Yep. And the O-line, we talked about Frederick already. Connor Williams enters the left guard spot. I was not a Connor Williams guy, but to get him in the second round, I'm not going to hate on that. Tyron Smith, still, I think he's the best left tackle in football. Zach Martin, I think, is the best right guard in football. Travis Frederick, I think, is the best center in football.
I agree. I would say all of that is fair to kind of say. Especially Tyron Smith and Martin, I would 100% agree with. Frederick, yeah, too. I mean, you just named 3 of the 5 starting offensive linemen are all pros. Okay, pretty good offensive line there. We can move on to the defense because the offense is what it is. Like, we know what we're looking at here. Yeah.
I like DeMarcus Lawrence. I think he's a stud.
This was an interesting one for me because he kind of had a year out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I saw this, my first thought in my mind was, if they overpay him, this is going to be the biggest hole in the salary because DeMarcus Lawrence has not been consistent by any means, with that. So the season he had was fantastic and it was in a contract year. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad they didn't, give him the ridiculous amount of money for one season, just from a football perspective, because that would have really destroyed the Cowboys long-term financially.
Yeah, 14.5 sacks. The year prior, kind of struggled with a back injury, so he was limited that season. Mm-hmm. But really tore it up last year, and obviously made huge strides. So there you go. Do you like the rest of the D-line?
Fine. I mean, look, this defense has never been great, and somehow Rod Marinelli
it's all about Rod Marinelli. That's what it's all about. I do think the defense is better than it's been in years past.
I agree with that, yes.
It's probably the best defense they've had in like 5 years, to be honest.
I agree with that too.
Yeah, and then Rod Marinelli, he just makes it all work.
100%. I mean, he's what really makes this defense go. You go to the linebacking crew, man, doesn't it seem like, Adrian, every single year the Cowboys are one healthy Sean Lee away from winning a Super Bowl? Like if you talk with anyone, that's what they would always tell you. But Obviously, Jalen Smith, a guy with through-the-roof upside athleticism. You and me both loved Van Der Esch, so
Yeah.
I didn't understand why the Cowboys fans didn't like taking him unless they were like, oh, we need a receiver, which I would have been cool with.
Mhm.
But stud linebacking there. It's a good linebacking crew here, even if and when Sean Lee doesn't play.
Yeah. They're going to move Byron Jones to corner, so he's going to try playing corner this year. Chidobe Awuzie is your other corner. Anthony Brown is your nickel. I liked Anthony Brown as a rookie. Then last year he kind of shit the bed. But, that's that. I like Awuzie a little bit. We'll see about Byron Jones. I don't think he really worked out at safety for them.
No, he didn't. And they went a very similar route as the Packers and the Eagles in terms of, hey, let's draft a bunch of corners and let's just kind of see who sticks and who doesn't. And I think that's a great move there because if you're not going to be able to draft, a Lattimore really high, then go spend those mid-round picks on corners and just take flyers and hope one of them sticks. So defensive backs, there's no one here, Adrian, that says lockdown stud, Pro Bowl. But there's a whole bunch of flyers here that maybe one of those guys develops. I would say it's a below average group, but because of how young they all are, I would still take this group over, certainly some other DBs in the DB crews in the NFL because there's a lot of upside here.
Yep. Where do you got Dallas finishing?
Vegas has him at 8-8. I get him at 7-9. I just don't see enough offense around Dak to really make this happen. I think we're probably going to see more Dak on the move this year than ever.
Yeah, I've got 7-9 too. 7-9 and last in the NFC East. So I said nobody finishes over 500, but I'm basically going to put teams around 500. So they're basically going to be hovering around there. All right, let's move on to the Giants. The Giants, they get away from Ben McAdoo. Thank God for that. Well, not for me though. I like Ben McAdoo in New York.
Quietly, Adrian, this was one of my favorite drafts in the NFL. I mean,
it was a good draft.
Just 1-2, your first two picks. I love both these players. Like, I haven't met anyone who doesn't like Saquon, so there's really nothing to talk about Saquon here because
you might have gotten the best guard in the draft.
Exactly, man. Hernandez is just a complete nasty SOB. Exactly what you want from the interior. And this offensive line was so porous for years. Mm-hmm. Bringing him in was awesome. I liked Kyle Lauletta later. I mean, this is a guy who's developing, and obviously he beat out Davis Webb, who got released there.
How funny was that? Dude. I couldn't tell you how many Giants fans this offseason told me that Davis Webb was the future, that they didn't need a quarterback because Davis Webb was their guy.
I knew Davis Webb wasn't the guy the second that Geno Smith got to start in that game. The second they were like, nah, Geno's going to be the guy for us, I was like, oh, so Davis Webb isn't that dude.
Because we were both like, why would they not start Davis Webb? Why don't you try and see what you got in him?
Exactly right. At that point, Davis Webb should start looking to sublet his place in New York.
Yeah. All right, Saquon Barkley. The knock on him, if there is a knock, is that he maybe in between the tackles, not so hot, but he's got everything else in the bag. I think, I kind of made the Marshall Faulk comparison with him. I think he can do everything. The jump cutting ability is ridiculous. The way he can catch the football. The in between the tackles stuff. I mean, Marshall Faulk, did he really run between the tackles per se? Not really.
Yeah, I'm good with it. I'm like, if your biggest knock is that, then you are really nitpicking. Saquon's a stud here. Let's just move on, Adrian. He's an absolute stud.
And what I love is not only do you have Hernandez, but Solder. So at least you have a pairing there. All right, maybe your line still stinks, but at least you got something there on the left side, and you just run with Barkley over there.
Yeah, now Eric Flowers is still a massive issue there on the offensive line.
How is he still there? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know. I mean, to be honest with you, even if the Giants would have drafted 5 offensive linemen in the first 5 picks, assuming they didn't have Nate Solder, I would have been cool with that too. It was that big of an issue for them. But, hey, I love Will Hernandez. I like the Solder signing. Good improvement in the offensive line. Still not a good offensive line, but it has significantly improved.
Odell Beckham gets a big contract. I would have rather traded him.
This is tough for me. I would have traded him too. And the reason I say that is because the Giants are in purgatory situation right now. Yeah. They're not a Super Bowl team. You're not a Super Bowl team. Just accept that. You're not a Super Bowl team. Best case scenario, you win the wild card and you lose to one of those teams. So what's the point? So I'm with you, Adrian. I would have traded him, gotten the draft picks, and continued to rebuild here.
Yeah. All right. We'll move to the defense. We spent enough time, I guess, on the offense. All right. Defense, they're moving to a 3-4. So my question for you is, they go James Betcher is their new defensive coordinator. How long does it take to make that transformation? To go from a 4-3 to a 3-4. When does that unit really start to look like a well-oiled machine?
I think it's when your first three down linemen are in place, everything else can kind of start to check. I think it starts with the front three, and then the back four backers can kind of move. They did that. I like the BJ Hill move a lot. I was a big BJ Hill.
Yeah, dude, you're not kidding about their draft, man. Like every guy they drafted, I loved.
Yeah, exactly. Now that said, they could all suck minus Saquon. He's not going to suck, and I could be a complete moron. But everyone that they drafted, I really liked. I like
Lorenzo Carter. That was your boy.
That was my dude. My dude. So they got him on the edge there. They have Damian Harrison, Delvin Thompson. Those front three there is pretty darn good. They bring in Mario Edwards, a guy who was always hurt with Oakland, but he's going to be your late round guy, your fourth guy off the bench for the defensive line. That's fine. Lorenzo Carter, as Adrian talked about, just an absolute missile. You want to watch him work, go put on the Georgia Notre Dame tape because he runs around Mike McGlinchey so fast you would think it's a merry-go-round sped up because this guy has all world level speed. Linebacker, though, Adrian, has never been anything the Giants have ever invested in. So I'm glad to see them make that move for Alec Ogletree. No means is he a stud.
Yeah.
But that linebacking crew was horrible for the better part of the last decade.
All right. So I'm sorry. It's already 12:24. You have a call at 12:30, don't you?
Well, let's keep pushing.
Okay. All right. Giants, where are they finishing?
The G-Men, I got them 8-8. I think they're going to win a couple more games than they probably should because there's so much weapons on the offense. But I don't love it either. 8-8 is where I have the Giants second in the division.
Yeah, that's what I've got. I've got 8-8. We could spend more time on them, but let's just quickly go through the Redskins. The Redskins. This is a team that every year everybody has them finishing last, and they go win like 8-9 games. That's what they do. That's the Redskins. We don't even need to go further on them. This is what they do every year.
Every year, the Redskins find a way that Gruden doesn't get fired. And every year he's on the hot seat and somehow wins like one or two more games than he should.
Yeah.
And the offense somehow scores more points than they should, but they're still not good enough to make the playoffs.
Alex Smith is your quarterback. He replaces Kirk Cousins. They should have just paid Kirk Cousins.
Just paid Kirk Cousins. Or you wait and you make a move for Tyrod Taylor because I like Alex Smith more than most people, but at the same time, you trade Alex Smith in a starting corner. I mean,
a good starting corner.
So that's why I didn't love the move here from the Washington Redskins point. And to be honest with you, like for what? Realistically, like for what? Just so you at best can go 8 wins opposed to going 4 or 5 wins? Who cares? Go 4 or 5 wins, take a quarterback next year, or you just wait around and you hope you get lucky in the Jake Fromm sweepstakes in 2 years. You get a quarterback then.
Yeah. Alex Smith, I'm kind of in agreement with you in this sense. I mean, he had a great year in terms of his long ball accuracy. Yeah. That's something he gets knocked on, but he actually was throwing the ball downfield a lot last year. So that's actually something in his game he's improved on. All right, running back. So who's going to be running the ball? Is it going to be AP? Do they go is Chris Thompson kind of the guy? I know he's more of a scat back. Obviously, we had the big injury to Darius Geis. He's out for the year.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a massive blow. I mean, that really does suck from Washington's standpoint because he was going to be that guy, and I liked him a lot, but is what it is. Running back, Samaje Perine is just not going to cut it. I mean, he's just going to be a goal line vulture back in the NFL, it looks like. Chris Thompson, he's just your third down receiving back. So I think it's between Rob Kelly and AP, but, I mean, this is just a no-name bag of bunch here in terms of no one here is really elite anymore. AP is certainly not what he was in Minnesota. Offensive line, better than most people give him credit for,
yeah.
I will say there. And then you talk about injury-ridden people. How about Jordan Reed, Adrian?
Oh, you ain't kidding. I can't ever draft him in fantasy because he's always hurt.
I know. Like, even if I draft him as, like, my tight end too, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, yeah. I'd almost rather wait and take a rookie just because he's never healthy. Receive for a whole bunch of question marks. I mean, who knows what's going to happen here? But Yeah, offense. It's the offensive line that really makes this team move, and it's a pretty good quarterback, all things considered, I would say, but not a lot of weapons around him.
And the other thing about AP is you kind of have to change your offense in a little bit because offenses have changed. He's power guy, run up the middle. That's not the modern back.
You're right, Adrian. You're 100% right there, and that's where it becomes unique because you bring in Chris Thompson, and he certainly is 100% the exact opposite of AP,
Yeah.
so his value is certainly still there. But like I talked about the receivers, I think these receivers are realistically number 3 receivers for almost any other NFL team, and yet all of them are going to compete for the number 1 spot here.
Yeah. I mean, I like Jamison Crowder a little bit, but like a number 1, And then Paul Richardson, they spent big money on him. I'm not crazy about that either. All right, let's move on to the defense just real quickly. They've got 2 guys from Bama, Jonathan Allen, 2 first-round picks from Bama, Therod Payne and Jonathan Allen, and you pair him up with our Temple boy, Matt Ioannidis. That's your starting D-line, but it's a pretty good D-line.
It's a pretty good D-line. I think actually the front 7 is pretty damn good here.
It is. Yeah. Zach Brown's really underrated. Ryan Kerrigan's a beast. Preston Smith is kind of underrated too. So they've got some really good pieces there.
Yeah, it's Preston Smith and Ryan Kerrigan have a guy who seem to alternate on which year they each get hurt, it feels like sometimes, because you only see ever one of them on the field at the same time. And both of these guys in a 3-4, they can get after you. I like Zach Brown as a middle backer. Mason Foster is more than enough as your second middle backer in a 3-4. It's a pretty darn good front 7 here. I think this is part of the Redskins team.
It is. And then you move on to the secondary. You still got Josh Norman. Are you big on any of these other corners? Quentin Dunbar, Fabian Morrow?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I mean, when you look at these defensive backs here, there's no one here that really gets me excited.
There's nobody at safety.
Yeah, DJ Swearinger, he will make those hits where he will absolutely destroy someone, and then the next hit he'll make will be illegal and he'll be suspended.
Yeah.
But like that's like the pro con of his game.
Yeah. Where you got the Redskins at?
I have the Redskins at 8-8, and I have them tied with the Giants for second in the division. I still don't think that they're going to be a team who's going to make the playoffs, and I think it's just because of the front 7 on defense. I like that front 7 significantly more than the Giants. I like it more than the Cowboys, and besides the Eagles, I think they might have the best front 7 in the division, and I think they're going to be a really hard team to run on, and I think there's going to be enough offense with Alex Smith to win games 21-14 type of range.
You know that they're going to go like 10-6. That's what they're going to do. But, this team is just weird. I got 7-9. So you're in agreement with me. You went bold and because nobody else going over 500 for you.
No, I got 2 teams 8-8, and I think that's honestly, guys, just because I think these other teams, side of the Eagles, they're probably just going to split with each other.
Yeah.
If any of these teams sweeps the other, they'll be a positive win team.
Yeah.
The only other player I want to talk about here is Adonis Alexander. I forgot to talk about him from Virginia Tech, a guy that the Redskins got in the supplemental draft. Huge, just a massive corner, all things considered. But the same thing is like usually when you get guys in the supplemental draft, it's usually a reason that they got kicked out of school and had to go to the draft late, like Adonis did. It's not always for the right reasons, but upside is certainly there. And you know what, Adrian? Like we talked about with the Cowboys and the Eagles, if you're not sure of a corner, don't take them early. Take flyers late and see what happens.
Yeah. Who's the most underrated player in the NFC East?
This is a really good one here. I think I'm going to go Ryan Kerrigan.
Okay.
Many people don't know that Ryan Kerrigan is almost a consistent 10-sack level player when he's healthy. It doesn't happen every single year, but when he's healthy, he can get after the quarterback.
I'm staying at linebacker in Washington. I'm going Zach Brown. I
like
think
him too.
Yeah, I don't think people even know who he is, to be honest.
I agree with that.
I mean, he comes from Buffalo, and he comes there, and he did a great job for them. So he's a miss. I like him a lot. So who's on the hot seat? This is easy. It's Jason Garrett.
Yeah, I think Garrett. Next one is Gruden. I think, to be honest with you, if either of these coaches finished in last in their division, I think they get fired. That's I think
after the first year of that 10-year contract.
Oh no, I'm not talking. I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about Jay. He's the forgotten.
Yeah, I'm talking about Jay. Yeah. if Jay or Garrett, if Washington or the Cowboys finish in last, I think that's the coach that gets fired here.
It's so funny that I'm already thinking John Gruden's going to get fired. Oh, man. Oh, that could not have gone off to a better start there in Oakland, huh?
I'm sure to be honest with you, Jay's entire life, everyone's been like, "Oh, you're his brother." So, Adrian, I'm sure what you were doing there is what everyone.
I was immediately thinking John Gruden. Oh, man. Oh, man. Fantasy player. You got one?
Take a flyer on a Redskins wide receiver or a flyer on the Cowboys wide receiver. You'll probably get them super late. You might even get these guys undrafted. But just volume alone, these guys are going to get thrown to. They don't deserve it, but these guys are going to get targeted a lot more than maybe some of the other better receivers. Like, I think Jamison Crowder will probably get more targets than Nelson Aguilar this year just because the ball's got to go somewhere in Washington, and Alex Smith likes to dump it down. So I guess I would say Jamison Crowder would be my guy.
I don't know about AP, but the only reason why I bring him up is he's basically the last starting running back being taken in most fantasy leagues.
Yeah,
And
unless you want to go to the Colts.
Yeah, and backups are going before AP. So, he's getting drafted late. Chris Thompson, if you're in a PPR, I like Chris Thompson. I think he's very underrated as a scat back. So and with Alex Smith being kind of a conservative quarterback, I think he could work out for you. So those would be my two.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chris Thompson.
All right, let's get you out of here. I kept you longer because we talked about the Eagles forever. That's what it was.
It's all good. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brendan. We got all the divisions done last year. We did all 32 teams. Didn't have as much time this year, so we just did 8 divisions.
Yep, absolutely.
There it is. All right, we're going to have a prediction show as well. That's Brendan Albert. I'm Adrian. Thank you. Take care.
Appreciate it, guys.